I said, you clowns over there, with these chicken legs doing all these stupid little wrist exercises. It was the literal proverbial, trying to fire a cannon out of a canoe. You're working on the end of the chain, right? As opposed to working on the first, like, hey, the first big link, if I'm a right shot, is my right foot being on the ground. So when we're in that complex or contrast phase, med balls and plyos generally come out of the pre-workout. So when we would say jump, throw, sprint, it's really just warm up sprint, because jump and throw are going to be in the lift.
All right, guys, welcome to episode 400. Actually, we've done 488, but 88 of them kind of been special episodes. But Coach Boyle's been on 400 episodes just with me. So it's pretty incredible over the 18 years that this is 400. And look, we're brought to you by Perform Better. They've been here from day one. It's been so awesome. And I wouldn't have these connections if it wasn't for the Perform Better Summit. So check out performbetter.com. They just announced the summit schedule and all the speakers, et cetera. I'll be attending in Chicago, June 12th to 14th. Coach Boyle will be at Providence speaking this year. We'll talk to him a little bit about that in a couple of weeks. But let's talk about traincoach.com and mbsc.tv. I still use them both. Today, we'll talk about a couple forum threads. The forum is still going super strong. And you could try both sites out for 7 days for free trials. Go to strengthcoach.com and mbsc.tv for those trials. Coach, how you doing?
I can't believe it's been 18 years or 400 episodes. That's crazy.
I know. Sometimes I see people with more episodes, but they've done, they'll do like 3 or 4 a month, like once a week, and they're shorter, et cetera. And I just think the proudest thing for me is that we've been consistent. We're the longest running strength and conditioning fitness podcast ever, really, at this point. 18 years, 2 a month. I mean, some have kind of gone off and come back. We've never done that. We've just been going the whole time. So it's pretty crazy.
It is it's wild, because I remember you saying you wanted to do a podcast, and I was like, whatever that is, I'll do it. I don't know what one is. Little did we know, that it would become, I just was saying on Twitter the other day that podcasts are the new books and seminars and videos. And I mean, because someone was talking about, actually Matt Gates was talking about not doing podcasts. And I said, this is how people learn now. You have to participate. It's like people, I look at people now with saying, I don't do podcasts. Like the people who said, I don't do email, I don't have a cell phone, that kind of stuff. It's like, hey, this is here to stay. This isn't going anywhere. And, if you want to be if you want to stay, I guess, part of the information exchange, then you have to do this.
Mike, you always said this about books. You said, I love books. I'm an author, functional training for sports. You're like, by the time it comes out, though, it's so late. And even with Audible books, right? I'm a big Audible person. I'm constantly on Audible. But it's kind of the same thing. I'll give you an example. I just went on an hour ago to Twitter, strengthcoach.com, mbsc.tv, looking for a few things to kind of talk about today. So this is the most relevant things that you've been talking about. Maybe we're 2 weeks behind sometimes on things, but kind of got to let some of the strengthcoach.com threads play out a little bit before I want to get in there. But this year, to your point, this is really the quickest, the most up-to-date information. So it's good stuff.
I mean, it is. I do it more and more. I'm always looking, okay, who do I want to listen to? Who do I want to find out more about? Who do I want to maybe understand better? And what do? You go find a couple podcasts they were on, and bang, what they're thinking. And I think about whether it's, David Gray or Jake Turr or Tony Holler or so many of the people, Hunter Eisenhower, that I've become acquainted with either personally or through the internet. It's all come from podcasts.
I think a huge part of it too is, and you and I talk about this a lot, because sometimes I'll say, Mike, can you expand on this? Because I don't think it can come across all the time. Maybe like in the past, you seem like you're being a jerk, or you're hitting, or you're being, mean about something, or, and that's really not the case. Once they hear you talk about it, like, oh, Okay, he wasn't being a jerk about that. He's just telling the truth and being honest and saying how he, his experience, et cetera. You're able to expand on this stuff more. So, uh, I think it's definitely the best medium for all this stuff.
I would agree.
And let's get right into it then.
With that said, let's go.
There was a thread about getting better at shooting. Let's call it either lacrosse or hockey. And really, it could apply to hitting and whatever. And you said to get better at shooting, we shoot. Shooting is legs and trunk. We've never done any grip, wrist, forearm stuff. I love med balls for shooting. And again, I feel like this is lacrosse, baseball, because there's that same hitting or pitching.
Hockey, field hockey,
Hockey.
all the same. All of
Yeah.
them are the same.
Mike, what do you like from the med ball? Because one thing that I'm always talking about with people with med balls is I'll actually kind of make sure that they're moving those hips first, right? I'll say, let's just work on the hips first. Just take the med ball. Don't worry about it. But that's how we want to do it. We want to lead with the hips. And we do step change of direction. So we just like a lateral step into the wall. What are some things that you're doing that kind of can not mimic, but from a global perspective, make, because it's not the shot. We don't have a stick.
I always tell them, you're throwing off your back foot. I just tell them, just think about what your back foot is doing. And if somebody usually thinks what their back foot is doing, all the sequencing happens nicely. And the interesting thing, and you know this because you deal with golfers, the better an athlete somebody is, the better they throw a med ball. It's really interesting. We get an adult who's not athletic who comes in to throw the medicine ball, and they do what's logical. They throw the med ball with their arms. Because if you looked at it, you would say, well, this is obviously what's happening. I'm grabbing the ball and I'm using my arms to throw the ball against the wall. But you give that same ball to somebody with a 100-mile-an-hour slap shot or somebody who can drive a golf ball 300 yards, and you see an entirely different set of circumstances in front of you. And that's the kind of stuff that we're trying to see. And that's why it's really funny because hockey-wise, I can remember. So when I very first started in hockey, so now we're going back more than 30 years, right? And guys would be in the weight room and they'd be doing all kinds of crazy wrist curls, and I'd look at these guys with like no legs and they're over there in the corner, doing, wrist curls and reverse curls and this curl and, pronation, supination. And I always remember thinking, like, I'd look at guys and I'd like, don't, like, I banned it. I literally banned it. I banned the wrist roller. I banned wrist curl. I was like, we're not doing any of this shit until you guys get some leg strength. I said, when we get some leg strength, we're going to rip some pucks. I said, you clowns over there, with these chicken legs doing all these stupid little wrist exercises. It was the literal proverbial, trying to fire a cannon out of a canoe. You're working on the end of the chain, right? As opposed to working on the first, like, hey, the first big link, if I'm a right shot, is my right foot being on the ground. And then it's going to literally work. I mean, medicine ball is the consummate kind of kinetic chain thing. That's why even with all our adults, we're always throwing medicine balls because we want them to be able to understand that process of coordination. That's literally what it is. It is literally coordination work. But now we would look at it and say, oh, it's rotational power. Well, yeah, guys, people, not guys, men or women with great rotational power are coordinated, right? You look at that and think, some people, and again, it's the hockey thing, right? Hockey guys can all hit a golf ball, all of them. They may not have a good short game, but they can all hit a golf ball far. And the better the guy's slap shot is, the further he hits the golf ball, because they've developed that ability to sequence, and they understand. Again, now you get into things, okay, extensions of your hands, right? Whether that's the lacrosse stick or the hockey stick or the field hockey stick or whatever it is, but all of these things kind of flow together.
Yeah, so you say off the back, like I usually say throw the ball with your right butt cheek, when they're doing it righty. I'll say spaghetti arms is kind of a golf term. Like I don't want the arms, you're like I was actually from a client, not from a golf pro. When he took a lesson, the golf pro was just saying, hey, make it spaghetti arms. It's all about the lower body first. Let the arms follow. And I always say break the ball. Those are just some things. I'm like, break it. And it's so important for me with my clients that I have a 4-pound medicine ball that I carry around. I have a big bag and I have all my little tools in there. And one of those tools is a 4-pound Perform Better medicine ball that, because every single person, I have an 85-year-old woman who throws the med balls. I have, 42-year-old woman who throws the med balls. Everyone is throwing, does a med ball routine. So obviously super important. Any other cues that you're kind of giving them?
I say forget you have hands all the time.
Nice. I like that.
Just forget you have hands. Don't worry about your hands. Don't think your hands aren't part of this. And again, some people just look at you like, huh? Like that doesn't make any sense at all. I'm like, yes, like just whip it and don't even think about what your hands are doing. And but like you said, louder, that louder is better, all these things. But we also went years ago, we switched to the Perform Better calls them soft toss now. We
Yeah,
used to
that's what I
call
have.
it Dynamax used to be the ones that make them.
Yeah.
And we went to soft toss because we realized that you didn't want one that bounced back off the wall. Not, or at least not too well. You wanted one that came back to you, but not fast, because what we wanted was, I always said, medicine ball throwing is really concentric, right? I mean, yeah, you're rotating, you're getting that eccentric, but I mean, it's that I want a freaking boom, powerful concentric contraction. I want a noise, a collision. It's all of that stuff that gets people rotating, and that's why I said Guy was like, and that's lately. I know you've been following me on like my Twitter, but lately now I just like I'm cheap shotting all of these stupid fitness accounts because I just can't. I'm so tired of just scrolling by it and realizing that, oh my God, I'm just letting everybody absorb all of this horrifyingly bad information because I'm just lazy.
Yeah.
Now I think, nope, I'm going to spend a minute and say, hey, that's really stupid. That doesn't work, or that's going to make
Yeah.
or whatever. Just
I've been seeing it.
throw them out there. The bad part is I think I'm getting more of those feeds as opposed to less because I'm responding to them. I think the algorithm rewards me for interaction and
Yes.
doesn't realize that I'm a troll interacting, just that I'm interacting. So I keep getting more and more of these. I mean, and again, and I don't know whether it's just me. Some of them are getting a little better. Maybe I'm causing them to not promote as much shit. Like I once a week, someone promotes spot reduction, and I actually had Craig Turner, who always disagrees with me, actually sent me some studies saying there is a little bit of evidence for spot reduction. I was like, there's this much evidence,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that's all there is. There's that much, and doing abs is not going to give you abs, and doing arms is not going to give you arms. It's like,
Um, just to go back to the med ball, I have the soft toss for the same exact reason. Even in 5 iron, I had a backstop. I'm like, you do not catch this ball back to you. So they would throw the ball because I wanted that full extension of power. And a lot of times with men, older men golfers, they won't get, one of their swing faults is they won't get to that left side, that internal rotation, and they'll kind of hang back on that right foot. And so that piece where don't worry about catching the ball, because I feel like if they try to catch the ball, they kind of stop, because the ball's coming flying back at him. So that's why we had a backstop. And I said, you don't catch it, just let it go.
well, it's really interesting too. You're right, but we actually started doing things like weight transfer stuff where we were throwing off the front foot because we realized Mike Davis, one of my friends, who's a really good hockey coach, always said, he said there's sometimes where we're coming in hard and we're gonna break on that front foot, and the action of the shot is going to come from the breaking action on the front foot. And I thought, oh, I never thought about that. And then I thought, wow, that happens in lacrosse too, and it happens in field hockey a lot, where the slap shot, the classic, the golf drive, the slap shot, the baseball swing. Sorry, so much of those are like back to front. So if I'm right-handed, it's right foot to left. But when you look at some of these other sports where you're going at the net, sometimes the if you think about kind of that snapshot in hockey, it's caused by the breaking action on your left foot. So we actually ended up getting kind of another category of medicine ball throws because we started saying, okay, now there's front foot stuff that we're doing as well as transferring back to front. So I always think, and I actually was downloading a video as I was logging on here, but it goes back to the old you can break the rules as long as you know the rules. With med ball, as with so many other things, there isn't as much right and wrong as there is looking at it and thinking, okay, does this give us that? And I like the word sport imitative versus sport specific because I want to get sometimes a sports imitative type of effect, but it doesn't have to look exactly like I don't care. Like I don't say to guys, oh, it's got to look like your slap shot. I don't care about that. But I do want rotary power and I do want if I'm a right shot, then I'm sequencing off my right foot.
Yeah, interesting. Mike, do you ever do? I never really hear you talk too much about contrast training in terms of when you see some people program contrast training, it's almost like they have a full, not a full day of it, but like that whole session is, upper body, lower body for the most part. So, doing a trap bar deadlift, a couple, 3 to 6 reps, and then doing some jumps. But I feel like if I've seen you do it in the past, you've only done maybe like a set. If you're doing any, where are you putting it, and are you doing any with the upper body?
Yes. So we will do pretty much one phase of it every time. So upper body, we that's where it's interesting. It's a really good question and very applicable to med balls. So with upper body, we will not throw med balls before the workout. We will throw the med balls in the workout. So when we're in that complex or contrast phase, med balls and plyos generally come out of the pre-workout. So when we would say jump, throw, sprint, it's really just warm up sprint because jump and throw are going to be in the lift. And so we might do medicine ball bench and bench press. We might do chin ups and med ball slams. We might do any sort of lower body exercise combined with the plyo. And then a lot of times what we'll do is we may even do some frontal plane stuff, lateral lunge or lateral squat with our rotary throws, because now those will work in terms of being frontal plane kind of dominant. So yeah, we do it for one phase. You don't, and it's really funny. I guess we probably haven't done a good enough job of videoing it, probably because it takes longer. Because now you've got to get somebody. I'm going to get in. Like for me, it would take some editing almost. Because all right, I'm going to get Anthony's bench press set, and then he's going to get done, and then he's going to go over and he's going to get set up, and he's going to do med ball bench. And now I got to get him doing med ball bench. So you might not see it because we probably don't take the time. So that's it's a good lesson for me for next summer, because I can make sure that we get some of those sequences on. I was going to say on tape. Imagine, huh? Get some of those on
Yeah.
video.
I think it's a good question, a good segue into vertical jump. I always say this. I don't know what made me think of this today, but have you ever treated vertical? There was a thread on strengthcoach.com. Really, that's why it made me think of it. But have you ever, which by the way, turned into a whole HRV thread? So it went from vertical jump into HRV into Brandon Marcello talking about wearables, and it was crazy. Anyway, vertical jump, like speed training, almost like, look, if you want to get a better vertical jump, you need to time. You're not timing, you're testing. Have you ever thought about that piece of it?
Oh, we do it all the time. Actually, it's
You
really funny.
do.
We never talked about that. Yeah, we'll probably get at least 6 recorded vertical jumps a week.
No way. I didn't realize that. Okay.
Sometimes, yeah, and sometimes it will be just like you said, complex or contrasted with like our trap bar jumps or something like that. A lot of times I'll just say to the guys, okay, do trap bar jumps in between sets, go and get 3 verticals in, and we're always much it's same exact idea as a sprint. All of our guys know what their best vertical is. The one thing that I don't get, and I wish it it is a great source of frustration for me, is why we kind of have good days and bad days and inconsistencies. And I can never kind of put my finger on, hey, well, this is why. I remember it happened once. One day this summer, Mark jumped to 36, and he never jumped to 36 again. He jumps to 34s. I don't even know if he jumped to 35 again. He was like, I don't know. I don't know what it was about that day. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't either, but I wish I could bottle it. I wish I could go back and say, hey, here's what we were doing those days before. And I almost need to do a better job of trying to create almost like a behavior log of saying, okay, did these come after a weekend off? Did these come after we missed a workout? Did these come after a really, a light lower body week? Like what caused them to happen? And I can never find it. I can never hit that. Because obviously, right, we always talk about it's kind of the holy grail. If we could think of, okay, we're going to PR in the sprint every time we sprint, and we're going to get a PR in the jump every time we jump. We're just going to go nothing but up. Everybody's going to have a 40 and everybody's going to run a .9 flying 10. It doesn't work that way. But why it doesn't work that way is sort of the great mystery of strength and conditioning. Why does it not work that way? What interrupts our progress? And year 43 don't have the answer.
my guess would be too many factors. So, what was the sleep looking like in terms of not just the night before, but in general? What was the hydration looking like? What's the, and Casey Means book, the Good Energy book, started to make me think about these things. Like, what is that energy, and how long? Like, so for example, what was Mark eating those for those 3 or 4 days beforehand? Not just, okay, he woke up, he had a great breakfast this morning.
It's also it's the bigger picture in terms of in sport that doesn't really matter because what you need is consistency. You don't need you don't want to look and think, oh, you're going to have like one all-star game, one game where you play like you're unbelievable, and then the rest of the year you're just average, right? I mean, you're trying to be really good the whole time. So I always look at it and think, even if I knew team sport is not say like track, there's no peak, there's no, hey, I mean, there is if you get to the national championship, you've got to figure out, hey, how do we peak in the national championship? How do we be at our best when it really does come down to one game? But team sport very, very rarely actually comes down to one game. And if it does, that's the Super Bowl. It's the national championship. It's whatever that is. And by that time, usually you got guys that are so tired and so beat up that it doesn't matter anyway. And
Yeah.
now you're just hoping that they'll have a maybe a better than average performance in that last game. So it's an interesting phenomenon nonetheless.
Actually, Alan Cosgrove talked about that on the last podcast because we were talking about obstacle course racing. And he said it's a lot easier than dealing with teams, like from a peaking perspective, because we were talking about different races throughout the year, what's more important, et cetera. And he said, but I find it so much more interesting and challenging when I'm working with a team because technically you really don't want everybody peaking at the same time. Like during the season, you want to kind of have a couple guys peak in, and because you want to kind of go into the playoffs where, almost like a reset, right? Like, so they peaked at different times. And I thought that was really interesting. It's funny that you brought it up too.
Yeah,
So
it's fun. I haven't listened to that episode with Alan yet, but it's true where you because I always used to think about that with hockey even, and we would always like at BU because we were really good. We would always think we're going to train hard all year because we're making the play. We're making the Hockey East playoffs. Do you know what I mean? We're not looking and thinking,
yeah.
oh, we've got to be good at the end of the year, hoping that we'll make the Hockey East playoff. Coach Parker used to always tell the guys, he'd say, hey, guys, like a bad year, if we don't make the national tournament, that's a bad year. We're trying to win the national championship every year that we play. So it's we don't have the margin of error maybe that other teams have, but it gives you a little advantage in preparation because even sometimes during the Hockey East playoffs, we'd still train because we knew we'd already made the national tournament. We said, no matter what happens in the Hockey East playoffs, we're still going to make the NCAA tournament. We
Yeah.
in some seasons, kind
Yeah.
of because of the rankings and a lot of that stuff.
Cool. Coach, one last question on the somebody asked, what do you do on traincoach.com? What do you do when athletes come in for a short visit? I consider this maybe 2, 3 weeks, maybe less. Sometimes I'll get a visiting tennis or player or college students back for a couple of weeks during the summer. How do you handle that short period of work with someone? I'm assuming you kind of run into this a little bit as well.
Yeah, I thought the answer that came before mine was actually really good. And I think the answer for us usually the answer, as I said, is okay, where have you been? Where have you been? What have you been doing? When was your last workout? I think there's sort of an informal information gathering that you're going through during that time because sometimes people will come in with great expectations. Oh, I'm going to be here for 3 weeks. I really want to go at it. And I'm looking at it thinking, oh, if you haven't worked out for 2 weeks, we can't go hard this week to begin with. And we've got to kind of ease you back into it. And so you have to go through that information gathering process where you figure out, okay, where has this person been? What has this person done? And then how do I ease them into this program? So, and that's why sometimes I always talk about the fact that we're not in the miracle business. So I will not tell someone
Yeah.
they can't come for 3 weeks generally, particularly if they're a better athlete who wants to come for a short period of time. But in general, that's not the business that I want to be in. I don't want to see somebody for 3 weeks. I want to see somebody for 8 weeks or for 10 weeks where I can really feel like I'm going to make an impact on them, as opposed to a lot of times with that 3 week person, I think like, hey, Anthony's coming for 3 weeks. I want to make sure he doesn't hurt himself. I want to make sure he doesn't get in here and he's so excited to be here and so fired up that he can't do it.
All right, good stuff, Coach. Well, thanks for doing this, and we'll speak to you next time.
All right. Thanks, Dan. I appreciate it.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for episode 400 of the Strength Coach Podcast. Thanks to Perform Better for, like I said, being here the whole time. And we wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for them. Thanks, obviously, to Coach Boyle and strengthcoach.com, because same thing. I mean, would have never done this and kind of continued to do this all these years. So remember, go to performbetter.com, check out all the summit lineups there. One thing too is, obviously we have a new format. We're doing Coach Boyle every other episode and a strength coach every other episode. We got some great stuff coming up with Perform Better, adding to it with the video. They're going to start showing some different exercises, etc. So just shoot me an email to strengthcoachpodcast@gmail.com and just tell me if like what you think of the new format, or write a comment on Spotify, because that's like kind of how I'm mostly utilizing that site now, as opposed to just having like a website. So I'm making the Spotify really my home base. So go there, or just really strengthcoachpodcast@gmail.com. Tell me what you think of the new format, if you like it, if you don't like it, or maybe some people that you want to see. So guys, thank you for listening. As always, thanks always for all the great feedback, and we'll talk to you next time.